Listen, our next congressional speaker is Congresswoman Ann Wagner. Congresswoman Wagner represents the 2nd Congressional District in Missouri and began serving in Congress in January 2013. Prior to seeking election, Congresswoman Wagner had experience in the private sector working in a family-run business and the public sector as a longtime committeewoman who went on to serve as the chair of the Missouri Republican Party. Congresswoman Wagner currently serves as the vice-ranking member on the House Financial Services Committee, the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and the Subcommittee on Diversity and Inclusion. Congresswoman, first off, I just want to thank you for toughing out today's interview. I know that you had a long trip and that you're not feeling your best today, and I really do appreciate you still joining us. I will say this, that through my experiences, Congresswoman, I can say with a high degree of confidence that your male colleagues in the House, had they feeling the way you are feeling today, they would have bailed on STA. So I do appreciate you sticking it out with us today, and thank you for being here.
No, I'm pleased to do it. You are so important to the work that we do in financial services, and the information and resources and support that you all provide. Jim from STA is outstanding. I have, my trip to Poland and Ukraine and some of the other travels have just really put me down. But so you don't get to see my smiling face, but you'll get to hear all my wonderful tidbits of wisdom here. How's that?
Right. And everybody gets to see my chubby cheeks for a full half an hour. So why don't we jump into this? I think I'd like to start the conversation is with the theme that you expressed a year ago during the GameStop hearings, and that's the power of choice as a means for investors to protect themselves. Now, obviously there are always calls in the public domain that regulators need to do more to protect investors, but little is really mentioned about the range of choices that investors have today and how those choices provide protections. So maybe if you could just start there and maybe just expand on your thoughts in this area and why you kind of went in this direction during the hearings that we had a year ago on market structure.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Jim. And I think that what we learned during that GameStop saga, I'll say, is that investors have more choices when it comes to where and how they invest their money than ever before. And that is due to free market competition and the advancements in technology that level the playing field for retail investors. In the past few years, we've seen firms continue to make their services more attractive to the retail investor by lowering account minimums, allowing fractional trading, and most importantly, offering zero commission trading. These changes have really broken down what some Americans might see as barriers to market participation, and have given, I think, millions of new investors a chance to take part in America's capital markets, which are the absolute strongest in the world. One choice that remains out of reach for many Americans is the opportunity to become an actual accredited investor. And the current accredited investor regime excludes most Americans from investing in some of the, I'd say, the highest growth phases of companies. And I believe that Congress and the SEC need to further examine ways that we can expand access to qualifying as an accredited investor. And rather than focusing on policies such as banning payment for order flow or a financial transaction tax, our committee needs to remain, I believe, focused on increased retail participation, something that has been a drumbeat of mine throughout the last 10 years, as I've served all 10 years on Capital Markets Subcommittee, removing regulatory barriers that hinder Americans' access to the cap markets, and allowing innovation to flourish through advances in evolving and dynamic technologies.
Those are great points. I mean, it isn't just a technology story here. It is also about, as you talked about, some of the rules around accredited investors, and that the Obviously, where
Mhm.
our economy right now is, there are so many, the private markets have gotten so large and companies are staying private longer. Being, wealth generation obviously is part of what the overall goal should be for legislators and regulators to provide the means for there to be wealth generation within our country. And it's hard to achieve that goal if only a portion of the society are able to access the new and fast growing companies that are out there.
That's right.
I,
That's right.
yes. Why don't we pivot? Why don't we pivot now to listen? There's going to be a hearing at 2:00 today on on exchanges. It's going to be, it's actually a subcommittee hearing here. And it's going to be covering I believe, like, going in, hearing today on the level of oversight of our national exchanges and the role the exchanges play in our economy. I mean, what are your thoughts on the state of play as it pertains to U.S. exchanges? And is there anything that you're hoping to learn today in the line of questioning that takes place?
Yeah, I'm gonna rally, and I'm gonna be, I hope not virtually, I'm gonna try and get into the actual room. We have some great concerns with this subcommittee hearing today, and I really think that today's equity markets look vastly different than when the SRO model was adopted by Congress. For example, exchanges are now for profit, publicly traded commercial enterprises. And that being said, the U.S. equity markets have kind of long enjoyed a reputation as the world's finest. And these markets have served both investors and businesses well, powering economic growth, expanding wealth that has benefited investors and savers and I think businesses alike. Our exchanges are highly competitive, and trading is now dispersed across a variety of market centers, ranging across public venues. You've got the private trading pools, and then, of course, individual broker-dealers. What I'm hoping, I think, to learn during today's hearing is how any of the proposed changes to market structure would impact retail participation, something I care deeply about, and the companies aiming to raise capital by listing on exchanges. If we are to consider any significant changes, it must be done with academic analysis, through economic and market research, and soliciting data and input from just a variety of market participants. So we'll see. And I know that my friend and colleague Bill Huizinga will come out of the gate charging. We'll be there to have his back too.
Yes, I'm sure he will, and some of them as well. Why don't we take another pivot here? I mean, you serve as the ranking member on the House Financial Services Diversity and Inclusion Subcommittee. And, I, like many others, think that you and Congresswoman Joyce Beatty have been, really strong advocates for women, in calling out areas where improvements need to be made. STA, we have a Women in Finance Committee. It's in its 6th year right now. And, one of our guiding principles is there's never been a better time for women in finance. And I guess, a question I have for you is, like, would you agree with that statement?
Yeah. I'd agree with that statement. I do believe, though, there's much more to be done, particularly, I guess, when it comes to recruitment and probably more importantly, retention, and ensuring that the industry is more flexible and I'll say family friendly, so that mothers can thrive in their careers without facing unnecessary hurdles. As a working mom, now grandmother, I worked before, during, and after I had children. And, before I got into politics and public service, it wasn't just at our family-owned business, carpet businesses. It was, I worked at big companies in Missouri, Hallmark Cards in Kansas City, Ralston Purina in St. Louis. And I have always been passionate defender of first of all, equal pay for equal work. And in the past few years, we have seen a shift in the private sector to offer paid parental leave policies. So these policies are particularly beneficial to women who we know are more likely to take on a primary caregiver role within a family. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, it was women who left the workforce probably at a rate, I think it's as high as 4 times that of men. And when a woman leaves the workforce in order to raise a family or care for a family member, her earnings capacity is not only diminished at present, but when she does return to the workforce, she tends to make less than her male peers who have advanced and grown their earning capacity during the same period of time. So offering paid parental leave enables those women to remain in the workforce and avoid lagging behind their peers, and helps, I think, close the gender wage gap. So another factor that I have really focused on, Jim, is the disparity between men and women who earn degrees in the science, technology, and engineering and math fields, or STEM. In 2019, I requested a GAO study to assess how firms are supporting increased participation among women in STEM programs at both the secondary, undergraduate, and graduate levels, and what best practices firms are using to recruit and retain women with STEM degrees. And last year, the GAO published a study which found that several factors affect women's participation in STEM degree programs, as well as careers in the financial services industry. And after over a year of research and interviews with stakeholders, the report discussed factors that included young girls' early exposure to STEM topics, access to resources such as computers and high-speed internet, and even a sense of whether they belong in STEM degree programs. So the report found that in order to encourage young girls to learn about STEM, many financial services firms have stepped up, and they're providing support to nonprofit organizations that focus on girls' participation in STEM. One of my favorites is Girls Who Invest. This organization introduces girls to coding, basic programming, and other activities that may inspire interest in STEM education. We learned that firms that offer scholarships to women in STEM, or sponsor conferences and work with colleges and universities to recruit women with STEM degrees. These firms have made the effort to promote interest among women in both STEM and financial services. Well, they're going to have a lasting impact on the future generations, I think, of women. And I would encourage your firms to participate and to actually partner with these organizations that focus on some of the worthy goals that are out there. But thank you for asking. I have served along with my friend Joyce Beatty as the ranking member on D&I for I'm finishing up 2 terms. Appreciate the question.
Yeah. Well, listen, and there's one area you touched on something that has been our realization as well, right? I mean, as a general statement, we do feel that women are being hired, coming out of schools in the financial services. However, there is clearly an issue with that first promotion, that first raise.
Yep.
And then also in the area that you talked about, retainment, as far as when they decide to leave the workforce for an extended period of time, to raise a family. And I do want to take a moment to just give a shout out to FINRA. Around 5 or 6 years ago, ourselves and others, it wasn't just us, it was other people expressed this, made them aware that their licensing policies, if you're a lawyer, if you're an accountant, if you leave your industry, you can come back 5 or 6 years later and still have your license intact, and also be able to take continuing ed during that window. And that did not exist in financial services. The most basic license that you need is a Series 7. The old rule used to be that after 2 years, you just lost it. So I just want to take a moment, in case Robert Cook is listening, to thank him again for the work that him and his team have done to change their licensing and continuing ed policies to make it easier, and more, well, not easier, just more reasonable and more just for primary caretakers, for or anyone who's really taking an extended leave from work, for whatever reason that may be personal to them. Okay, one last question.
Absolutely.
We have Congressman Meeks presenting later today. Listen, we've been really fortunate today, Congresswoman. Like, obviously, a lot of your colleagues, you serve on more than just one committee. All of you serve on House Financial Services Committee, but all of you also, serve on other committees as well. So it really has added a lot of flavor to the content today, and we want to obviously take full advantage of that. Congressman Meeks is presenting later today, and the two of you do head up the House Foreign Affairs Committee. You were part of a group of congressional members who traveled to Poland in the early days of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Can you share with us your experience from that trip and anything else you want to share on that? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it very much, Jim, and it was life altering. And I'm a former United States ambassador in Western Europe, so I come with a lot of expertise in this area and a strong believer in NATO and our strengthening our transatlantic relationship. So it's been a joy. This is a group of 7. There were 4 Democrats, 3 Republicans, all come from different ideological backgrounds and beliefs, and we were pretty much lockstep in agreement on everything that we got done after meeting with so many of our NATO allies and foreign ministers, a satellite meeting with President Zelensky, an hour and a half to 2 hour face-to-face with Secretary Blinken, who was staying in our same location. I mean, it's been, just over 2 weeks ago. I still have not, after some other travel that I've had to do. When you shoehorn 15 people in a G7, we share a lot of germs together. So we've all come back a little under the weather, but we were all part of the Foreign Affairs Committee. And so we saw for ourselves the just incalculable human cost of Russia's invasion of sovereign and free country, Ukraine. And we met, as I said, not just some of the leaders that I outlined, but with millions of Ukrainians. There's a few of the millions that have fled Putin's brutal war on their people. And I spoke with women who had just crossed the border. The day we were there at the Poland-Ukraine border, about 132,000 were crossing over that day alone. There are now millions of refugees who have left. And these are mostly women who had just said goodbye to their husbands, their sons, their fathers, and who were going back to fight the Russian assault on their homeland. I'll tell you, not one of us was able to hold back tears when we saw what Putin had done to really rip Ukrainian families apart and threaten some of the most vulnerable Ukrainians. Putin's unspeakable, brutal assaults on some of the Ukrainian cities, and we've seen it most recently in Mariupol as he tries to build that corridor over from the Donbass to Crimea. We're talking about apartment complexes, shopping malls, all sorts of civilian infrastructure, maternity hospitals, humanitarian corridors that he will not open. As soon as some of the NGOs and the Red Cross, USAID, others that are lined up along the border trying and move in, he shells them. It's unheard of. It's nothing short of evil, plain and simple. The actual, attack on innocent civilians. So, Russia has brought an unimaginable suffering to the Ukrainian people, and they're leaning on their innate strength and their courage to keep their dream alive. But we must remain absolutely committed to keeping these heroes in the fight. And that was one of the number one things I took away. We got about a little over 10,000 troops from the 82nd Airborne that are stationed there in southeast Poland. And we met with General Donahue and many from the 82nd. And he said, keep them in the fight, continue to do to the Ukrainians, that is, continue to diminish Putin's army, and let's try not to escalate. We're kind of the key takeaway there. The economic sanctions the U.S. has imposed have been severe. We wanted them imposed much earlier. I think that the kinds of sanctions we've seen were better, would been used as a deterrent, not as the aftermath after he had lined up 190,000 troops on the border, Russian troops that began the invasion. So these are our sanctions that are now in place, and the U.S. and its allies need to continue to focus on completely isolating Russia. And it has been, really amazing to see how we as a Congress have come together, the American people, Europeans. I mean, even you've got Germany sending over lethal aid, not just blankets and helmets to Ukraine. That is a real change. They're now up there 2% in defense spending to NATO, which we never thought we'd say, even maybe a little north of that to 2.5. You've got countries like Sweden and Finland that are clamoring to be a part of NATO. So some of I know earlier this month, the Financial Services Committee unanimously passed my Isolate Russian Government Officials Act, and this would ban Russian government officials from participating in G20 summits and other global financial meetings. The bill would further isolate Russia until Putin fully backs down from this unwarranted and unprovoked invasion. So I think we've rightly imposed punishing sanctions on Putin. Kleptocrats, oligarchs, all of that to support this criminal regime. And we should be identifying major gaps in the current sanctions regime to prevent Russia, I think, from skirting these sanctions. That's something we're getting a little focused on. And we hope that this kind of maximum pressure sanction effort and the work that we're doing, supplemental $7 billion in lethal aid, another $7 billion in humanitarian aid, is going to help him make some right decisions. I know they're in Turkey now talking about ways to move forward on a ceasefire. We'll see where this moves in the days and weeks to come. I think Putin believed he'd have this over with in 4 days, and now we're on day 35. So, we want peace, and we want for Putin to have an off-ramp, but we want a free and sovereign Ukraine. And it's just been amazing to see how the international community has really consolidated around this incredible country that don't want our boots on the ground, don't want us there. They just want to be kept in the fight, and they want to fight for their own homeland. So it's been very gratifying, and Jim, I'm happy to be with you all today. I wish I was feeling a tidge better, but better you hear from me and not see my runny nose and sleepy eyes at this point in time. So thanks for putting up with me.
No, thank you. Thank you for joining us. And really seriously, thank you for those insights and description of seeing it, sharing with us your experience of seeing this all firsthand. I mean, I know, we've all been watching we've all seen the images on TV. It is difficult to watch. It is painful to watch. I'm 58 years old. I kind of thought that I never thought I would see something like this again, see something like this in my lifetime. I'd be thinking about, nuclear wars and so on. And I thought we were kind of moved past this, but obviously we haven't. So I want to just thank you for, just describing what you, what you experienced there. And also, I believe that your son serves in the military, and I want to, take a moment to thank him and recognize him for his service to our country and appreciate that very much. So with that, Congresswoman, I'm gonna let you go 5 minutes early here, okay? And please take care of yourself.
Perfect.
All right, and thank you so much again for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right.
I appreciate it. Thanks to all. Thanks to STA and as I said, all the support that you provide, and we're just grateful to you. So I hope the rest of your conference goes well and the rest of your meetings. But thank you for allowing me to participate. Take care.
That's our episode of Trading Views for today. We hope you enjoyed it. Please take a moment to like it and feel free to forward it to a friend or a colleague. And on behalf of the STA organization, we thank you for your support by listening in.